What's going on, everybody? Khalip's Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, I'm going to be giving you 5 reasons to buy the TCL 30Z in 2022. Now, this phone is a Cricket exclusive, and it's definitely one of the lower end, more budget options they offer. But despite its price range, this phone actually does have some pretty nice qualities. So I'm going to be going over 5 of my favorite things about it to help you decide whether or not it's worth buying for you. Now, before we go any further, I do want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to learn more about this phone, be sure to check out my full review and tips and tricks videos for it on the channel. But with that being said, let's get started. So my first reason to buy the TCL 30Z in 2022 is the display. With this phone, we're getting a 6.1-inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 282, and an aspect ratio of 19.5 by 9. So sure, on one hand, compared to a mid-range phone, for example, like the Samsung Galaxy A53 or any type of flagship phone, this is really not impressive at all. But for an entry-level phone, despite the specs on paper being pretty average, I do think this display for what it is looks really good. And considering that TCL mainly makes TVs, this is not really surprising at all because essentially they put the same technology from their TVs into their phones. So in general, even in really low-end, sub-$100 phones like this, pretty much every TCL phone is going to have an at least decent display. Come to think of it, I don't think I've ever seen a TCL phone that actually has a bad display. Sure, some of them aren't the best, but the colors and brightness are always really good for what they are. Even looking at the sharpness of the picture itself, despite it only having a 720p resolution, I do think it does look pretty good. So in general, if you're consuming a lot of content, like streaming videos, playing games, going on social media, browsing the web, and even stuff like reading, for such a low-end phone, the TCL 30Z is going to be a pretty good option. Now, in addition to just the quality, we also got a pretty good size and pretty good dimensions as well. At 6.1 inches, sure, it's not the largest display out there, but for a lower end phone, a lot of these phones have really small displays. And with this phone, you're still going to get the benefits of having a decently large display, but at the same time, it has a pretty slim design, so it's not going to be too bulky either. In addition to this, with an aspect ratio of 19.5 by 9, it may not be the best out there, but we're getting a decently tall and narrow form factor here. So if you're doing something like watching videos in landscape mode, for example, you're going to get a much more immersive cinematic experience and things are going to look quite a bit better. So it really goes back to the content consumption. If you're really looking for an entry-level phone but you're also doing a lot of that kind of stuff, then this phone is going to be a great choice for that. In addition to this, with the tall and narrow form factor like this phone has, if you're doing something like reading or scrolling through social media, you'll be able to fit more content on the screen without having to scroll as much. So in general, despite not being anywhere near as good as a mid-range or flagship phone, for what it is, the TCL 30Z definitely does have a pretty good display. Now, my second reason to buy the TCL 30Z in 2022 is because it has Face Unlock. Now, if we were talking about something like a mid-range phone or a higher-end phone, this would definitely not even be in the conversation because when it comes to Androids, I expect every higher-end phone to have both a fingerprint scanner and Face Unlock. But when it comes to an entry-level phone like this, not all of them, but quite a few of them have neither. And this is definitely a disappointment when that happens because I don't know about you, but I personally like to have at least one other option besides entering a PIN or something like that, since Face Unlock and fingerprint scanners are quite a bit faster and more convenient. Now, that being said, it is a little bit of a disappointment that this phone doesn't have a fingerprint scanner because for most people, fingerprint scanners are just a little bit better and they usually end up being faster and more reliable as well. But I am glad that we at least get Face Unlock. Now, that being said, as far as how well it works on this phone, I was actually pleasantly surprised because I didn't think Face Unlock on a phone in this price range would be that good. But in reality, Face Unlock on this phone is actually pretty reliable. So just to give you an idea of how it works, let me show you. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, Face Unlock is real fast and responsive on this phone. So if you're in the market for an entry-level phone, but you also want to make sure it has another option besides putting in a PIN or a password to unlock it, then the TCL 30Z is going to be a great choice. Now, my third reason to buy the TCL 30Z in 2022 is the headphone jack. Now, you might be thinking, this is kind of an odd reason to buy a phone since a headphone jack is more or less a given. Well, in this day and age, that's actually not really the case anymore. Sure, it hasn't quite hit these lower end phones yet, but phones like the Samsung Galaxy A33 5G, for example, and the A53 5G are starting to lose their headphone jacks, and seeing that a manufacturer like Samsung is going in that direction, it's really just a matter of time before all the other manufacturers start to follow. But luckily, with the TCL 30Z, TCL30Z, we do have a 3.5mm headphone jack right here, so if you have a pair of wired headphones, you can use them no problem. Now, I'm actually not quite sure how many people still use wired headphones in this day and age. I personally don't, but I assume a lot of people still do, and I always thought it was weird that manufacturers are starting to get rid of headphone jacks. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, because even besides headphones, what if you have an aux cord or something like that? Sure, everyone's pushing Bluetooth nowadays, but it's always nice to have the option to use a normal headphone jack if you want. So when it comes to this feature, just seeing the direction the phone industry is going, it's definitely one of those things that we have to enjoy while we still can. And with the TCL30Z, luckily, unlike some of the higher end mid-range phones, we still do have that feature. Now, my fourth reason to buy the TCL30Z in 2022 is the Next Vision features. Now, if you've never had a TCL phone before, you probably don't know what this is. So essentially, Next Vision features are some enhanced color options we get with the phone. This can greatly improve your experience when it comes to the display, and with an entry-level phone like this, very few phones in this price range even have normal color features, let alone the stuff this phone has. You can do stuff like image enhancement, video enhancement. There's a reading mode that makes it a lot more comfortable to read things on this phone, and you can also change the color mode as well. Now, if you want to learn more about how to use these features, definitely check out my tips and tricks video about this phone on the channel. But essentially, considering this is just an entry-level phone you can get for less than $100, it's pretty impressive how many display options we get. Now, my fifth reason to buy the TCL30Z in 2022 is the software. Now, with this phone, we are getting Android 12, and while phones in this price range having the latest version of Android isn't unheard of, in fact, plenty of them do, there are many more that don't. A lot of them have Android 11, or even worse, Android 10. And while I would not expect to get any major software updates with this phone, we're still getting the current latest version of Android. And not only that, but this phone is also really optimized for the software. So despite the phone itself being pretty slow, the software does run pretty smoothly. So on one hand, even though if you really want the latest versions of Android as they come out, this is still probably not going to be the phone for you. If you want a really good software that's up to date and works really well, then the TCL30Z, again having the current latest version of Android as of the recording of this video, is definitely going to be a good option for the price range. But those were 5 reasons to buy the TCL30Z in 2022. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. And again, if you want to learn more about this phone, be sure to check out my full review and tips and tricks videos for it on the channel. But that's it for this video. As always, I will see you in the next one.